Leaving to Learn is a book by Elliot Washor and Charles Mojkowski. This book is talking about the instilling of a curriculum that, when working best, is developed around student interests and passions. His Big Picture Schools is a model for that around the country.
Mm.
And at its best, it sends out students twice a week to internships where they work on and with not work on projects and around ideas that build career paths with mentors, business owners, and advisors. So it sustains and builds those interests into career paths. By way of example, Washer writes about Carl, a student who was struggling really badly at school, to the point where teachers were telling him, you should probably join the army.
Mhm.
We saw situations like that before. But instead, he dropped out of school and entered a big picture school. And there he told the advisor that he had an interest in medicine and politics. And so eventually he got an internship at the University of Colorado Blood Research Facility, studying cancer and research around cancer. And he eventually got a scholarship to some of the best colleges in the country. And now he built a business or a medical facility that treats patients with HIV. So that's the model, right? That's the great example he gives. And so this is a very interesting book. At school we emphasize core standards, right? But Elliot Washer would say they're so narrow.
Mhm.
Uh, think about this, Jake. Um, I mean, at the time I read this 10 years ago, this guy or this book seemed a little eccentric. And Elliot Washer seemed a little eccentric in
Oh,
proposing some of these ideas of leaving school
right.
for internships 2 or 3 times a week. But today he seems like a prophet, and I'll tell you why. Think about that. Think about jobs that existed 15 years ago, no longer are here. Meter reader, DVD repairman,
Mm. Yeah.
video store manager. Um, think about jobs 15 years from now. Experts are saying 80% of jobs that will exist 15 years from now have not been invented yet.
Oh, wow. Yeah. That's incredible.
So, what are we doing about it today?
Mm.
You think about the idea of studying a textbook, studying the core standards. How
Mm.
relevant are some of these standards? So I think it's a book that has a lot to teach teachers and administrators. What about you?
Yeah, I do too. As a history teacher, Ruben, I felt like it did a really good job with giving the history of students being disengaged, right? Why they drop out of school. And it goes over, the four main reasons, and then they'll go into a deeper four reasons, and then go precisely to each one and talk about that and say, hey, a lot of these kids are dropping out because of behavior, or they don't fit in, or they don't feel like they matter. And basically the author said, we have a solution to this, right? And let's look at these kids. And you mentioned a little bit of it with this young man who became, got into medicine. Let's look at their creative parts. Let's look at their giftings, right? And let's build around that. And when you mentioned about the Common Core standards, yes, we do look at it in a narrow way. But he was saying, hey, let's give them more things to work with, not just that. I know, Ruben, as I'm reading it, I got a little frustrated, not with the book, but with where I'm at. I was thinking, wow, this is something that has to be learned from top sometimes, even though I can bring it to my classroom, of course, and there's aspects I can bring to it, but to hold that whole idea of, hey, you know what, the standards, yes, they're there, but we should look deeper. And I'm not sure sometimes my admin administrators, or even not them, just even way up on top to the superintendent, are they willing to have a paradigm shift? You know what I'm saying? To say, hey, let's look at the whole child here, and let's also look at their giftings, their background, and let's create these projects, because that's part of the book as well, right? Creating these projects for these kids to work on, get them out of the school, right? Because that's the whole title, right? Leaving to learn. Get them out of the schools and get them into internships, get them into mentorships where they could not only be in a surrounding where they're interested, right? But also get to a point where they're presenting and they're learning, and they're be able to give information to others about what they learned out there, and then
So
bring them
that
back to the school. So
that's a proposal that's a shock to the system.
oh
So
yeah.
we talked to Crisal Rodriguez this week, and
Mhm.
she works at Da Vinci Schools, and she used to work at New Village, as did I. And reality, this is sending a student out of the class, out of the class. They're not learning the whole day,
Right.
and they're going to a business or an office or a hospital, and they are learning, and they are working. Internship, not getting paid necessarily, but
Mm.
this is going to be a kind of a shock
Yeah.
to a lot of people's ideas, but the result is uh, a career path chosen. They're doing something that is in their interest, in their passion. And so you're saying, well, how do you get administrators to do that? Well, that's not really something we can control unless you leave that school that you're at and
Right,
you
go
go
to
to a
another
big picture
program.
school. But
Right.
I will point out that because you mentioned project-based learning is
Sure.
also a feature of this book, and I want to talk about that. But so what do you do if the mission or the vision of your school does not include internships, sending a student out? He has a very interesting point at one point on one page. He talks about how he uses the metaphor how there's a shift early on in classrooms, and he uses the expression, "You're not the person I married," where there's a shift from how it was in kindergarten and first grade, second, and as it gets on in the relationship to education, it first starts with a focus on play, exploration, building relationships, to by the time they're in third grade, desks replace activity centers,
Mm.
and tightly structured and scripted instruction replaces exploration. And then you have the modern classroom. And I really reflected on that, and I thought, okay,
Mm.
if I can't go there, I'm going to bring it here.
Mm.
And what I mean by that is I'm going to look at the phrases he uses, and I'm going to try to instill it in my class today. So I boldface the words that he used when um, we had early classroom experience: play, exploration, and building relationships. Why can't we play today?
Yeah.
Why can't we explore? So when I say explore, I think it's useful to learn with the student. We
Mm.
explore together. Why do we have this rigid way of learning where we're standing and we're lecturing to students? That's not real
Mhm.
world.
Yeah.
And we explore together. This idea of play and building relationships, I think that's very useful, and I think you can imbue it into your own curriculum.
You know, when you're sharing, Ruben, it made me think also, why not invite people to come to your class? If I can't go out there, do that. And I've been able to do that in the past, but do that more. And I love that part of the book when it talks about have that time where you're playing, where you're you're still learning when you play. You know, it's not just fun. You know, I mean, it is fun, but you're by playing, you're with the content, right? And you're
But
learning from the content. So such an
but
important piece to it.
but there's also an emphasis in exploring student interest.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm
Yeah.
wondering if we ask the question in the beginning of the school year, what are you interested in? And then we look at the standards we're supposed to teach.
Yeah.
Why not combine it? Why
Mhm.
not be creative and draw, why draw it in the lines or color in the lines? Why not explore that idea? Um,
Yeah.
I think it's useful, and I think it might address some of the problems we're seeing with student dropout, rates, and even the micro problem of our own within the classroom walls situation where are students engaged in my class? If not, why not? Am
Right.
I addressing a student individually? So
Don't you think though, Ruben, that people get frustrated though when you're sharing that? Like they have to differentiate instruction. Now, let me tell you, what if you have 40 in a classroom? Sometimes it gets a little bit like overwhelming. Not that you can't do it. I'm not saying not to, but I imagine some of these classes in this big picture model that they are maybe smaller, but maybe they're not. And maybe I'm incorrect, but it's going to take, maybe it's just going to take some time. Maybe that's the answer. I don't know, but it does seem a little overwhelming sometimes.
Let me try to address it as a person who used to work at a big picture school. The reality is not every single student will even have an interest, a career interest. So maybe you break them down in groups. Maybe this group is the innovator group and they're creating apps. Maybe another group is a group that is trying to develop a medical supply thing or an innovation in medicine or a tool. So you have different groups with different projects. Maybe this other group is the drama group where they are creating a play and they're developing those skills. And so then they develop interests and passions. And then you look at the standards. You're not throwing out all the standards. You're looking at them and you're creating what he discusses, what Washor talks about as a project requiring multiple heuristics, which is a multiple modes of learning and development and ideas. So it's not just one thing. And so that you are looking at a variety of ways in which you are developing students in the real world. The other idea or the other concept he talked about is projects that originate in this idea he termed mystery, originates in mystery as complex problems in real world context. Now that's really hard to do in the classroom. Right. I agree with you. I believe that in a way where I teach, it's just old school already. It's not real world. You're learning things, and I feel like we're falling behind. We emphasize this idea of, are we addressing let me talk about jobs that exist today, careers that exist today that didn't exist 10 to 12 years ago. Are you ready? How about this?
Tell me.
Blockchain engineer, mobile app developer, AI analyst. And how about this one? YouTube content creator. That didn't exist 15 years ago. And so what's going to happen 15 years from now? What are we doing about it in the classroom? And if we don't address this, we're going to fall behind and we might not exist.
I think that's what's going to happen.
We're going to talk about 15 years from now. Hey, you know what existed 15 years ago? Teacher.
Hey, but you know what? That's a real deal. Ruben, I think that's when things change though, right? It's like, wait a minute, now we're not relevant. So we better either we quit. I don't think we could do that. Or we say, let's become relevant and let's look at these things that are in this book. Let's get these kids, like you were sharing, get them in groups, get them learning about something that's relevant and that's going to help them in their career. Because they'll tell you, like, some of these kids are saying, hey, I'm only interested in art, okay, well, what do we do with that? Because man, the dropout numbers are crazy, and we got to get them engaged. We got them. If not, we're going to keep losing them. And we're always trying to figure out, we're scratching our head. How do we do it? What do we do? Oh, geez. Read this book, because this is the future. And even though it was written, like you said, was it 15 years ago, Ruben? It was really for the future. And I think the big districts, like where I work at, we have to change things because it's not working. Kids are still dropping out. Kids are still disengaged. Kids still don't really, want to be there. And how do we get them into a place where they're learning about what they're going to be doing in the future. Hey, are they going to be working with computers? Are they going to be working in technology? Probably so. How do we get them there? So yeah, it's real stuff, and it's a little scary. Like, hey, maybe our teaching jobs are going to look different, and we better get going and start seeing the future and work towards that.
He also emphasizes in project work that products and performance can be the final result of what you're asking a student to do. So in talking to Crisal this week, she talked about some of the exhibitions. We both discussed exhibitions that students presented that was the final product or performance of the semester. And it included internship work, but I think we can kind of embed this into our classrooms, even if we're not at a big picture school or Da Vinci school where they send the students out. We can have a student exhibition of some kind where students demonstrate through a product, through a performance, through some presentation, their semester work or half a semester work, that they just get up there and they talk. I know I'm not doing well. We talked about this in this podcast. I know something's wrong when I'm doing a lot of talking.
Oh yeah.
When I'm up there and I'm just talking and talking, I go, oh, something, I already have a radar. I've already sort of set off, and I feel that something's off, because why aren't they getting up? Why aren't they presenting their product or their performance of some type? Yeah. And so it's something to think about for sure. Anything else that you wanted to say about this book?
No, I think it's funny that you share that at the end there regarding not talking so much, as let the kids be, let the kids do the talking. I've been really, after, I guess because reading this book, I've been thinking, hey, Kate, what can I do in the next couple of weeks project? And I actually just shared the kids, I'm teaching a psychology class, and we're learning the development of a child to basically to an older person, right? An elderly person, and into death. And so I've shared with the kids, they're so into right now, this Dahmer, Netflix, they're all talking about it. And I said, well, it's crazy. And I said, maybe what we'll do, guys, is we'll do I said, no, we're going to do this. We're going to do an activity where you guys are going to look at a serial killer and look at the development of that person and tell me what went wrong. Where did it go stagnant, right? And it could be maybe their parenting style. And it's because all these things that we covered during the last few weeks, now they could put it into practice. Like, oh, let's look at Dahmer. This is what happened.
I think we've definitely run out of our ideas of this book when we've shifted from Leaving to Learn to Jeffrey Dahmer. So maybe we should just end this discussion right now.
But I'm talking about psychology. Psychology.
I think I see.
You see my point. But anyway, yeah. So basically, I'll end with that at least it's getting me thinking, hey, you know what? There's other activities. Get them talking. Get them standing up. Get them doing that, because the more they do that, the better it is. And
the student exhibition is a very powerful tool for the students to demonstrate their learning across the semester. Oh, yeah. That could be a final, that could be a performance, that could be something that is tangible that could help them in the real world. That's the point, is what, and real world learning, as the title suggests of Crisal Rodriguez, this is the goal, because they need a career path. They need to get paid. Eventually, our students, are we preparing them? That's really the question we're asking. Okay, thank you, everybody. And Jake left. Oh, there.
No, I'm sorry.
And we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.